Mike, can you tell me some of the ways that drones are being used in the real estate industry?
Absolutely. Drones are being used in the real estate industry in a multitude of ways. Developers and architects are using drones to collect data to support 3D modeling. The construction industry is using drones heavily as a way to monitor the progress of construction projects as well as to enhance site security. Drones have also been used for mapping and surveying purposes as well as for site reconnaissance.
It seems to me that the use of drones in an urban environment is going to be a lot different than in rural areas. Can you talk to me about the regulatory landscape and how the use of drones in those different environments is going to be differentiated, and what the challenges are in a city versus out in farmland?
Sure. Big cities present a unique complication for drone usage in light of the density of the population itself and, in fact, the physical infrastructure of the city. Many of the regulations around drone operations would limit the ability to use them in a densely populated area like a big city such as New York. There are restrictions against operating drones over the heads of people who aren't actively involved in the drone operation itself. That can be something that's very difficult to achieve in a highly populated area. Whereas in a rural context, you'll have much more of an ability to operate without running into these restrictions. Another example is the proximity of many large cities to airports. There are airspace restrictions around airports that will affect drone operations, and so a city that has 3 airports located very close by, such as New York City, will present much more difficulty in using a drone.
Well, being over the heads of people, it seems to me that if you're in New York, it's really, really challenging not to be over somebody's head if you're up in the air. Is there a way to get around that, or just tell me if you want to use a drone in New York, how do you go about doing that?
If you're trying to use a drone in a densely populated area, you'll have to try to do things like control traffic flow around the actual area in which you're operating, if possible. Or you might have to go seek a waiver from the FAA from some of the restrictions on drone operations that would give you some latitude in terms of operating close to people or over their heads.
Mm-hmm. And are those waivers hard to obtain?
The waiver process is relatively new, and so it's not clear exactly how difficult it is to obtain a waiver in each instance. At the same time, the volume of waiver requests is very high, and so the turnaround time for the FAA to grant a waiver request can be fairly long. If you're planning to do an operation with the drone in the near future and you may need a waiver, you'll want to get started on that early.
Because obviously drones are collecting a lot of data and taking pictures of a lot of things, some of which they have permission to take, or which is their objective, and other things which they just happen to be capture. Is there a body of law around that at all?
People do need to keep in mind that there may be privacy laws already on the books that would restrict or impact the way in which they operate a drone. Obviously, drones are often used to collect imagery, and collecting images of people or other property on the ground that doesn't belong to the drone operator, isn't otherwise authorized, could really present some complications with respect to the privacy regime.
It seems to me that the use of drones can really revolutionize certain areas of the real estate industry. Do you see that happening? Are there big companies that are growing up, sort of displacing building inspectors, displacing some other sort of aerial photographer? And is it becoming a concentrated industry, or is it just sort of haphazard at the moment?
My sense is that in reality it's not going to displace as many of the people and workers involved as one might typically think. In reality, it will be much more like an additional tool that a surveyor or some other building inspector may have on their truck, rather than it replacing that inspector or that surveyor entirely.